Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
What's up, guys? What's up? We're doing the Deck Talk podcast, and I am Colin Burnett, and that is my good buddy Norman Lee.
Yeah, you're Colin Burnett. I am Norman Lee.
Yes, right. So we wanted to get on here, and golly, we already got 5 people on here already. So what a
I think we got a little echo, Colin.
yeah, it's coming from my phone. There it goes.
Bear with us. This is actually the first time we're actually doing the show from 2 separate locations. Usually we're in our podcast studio, so we're trying to figure all this out on the fly. But I'm about 1,500 miles from it right now.
I don't know. You're about 9 hours away from me, so
9 hours away.
But yeah, let's go right on with it. We got if you're on our Facebooks, leave us a comment telling us that you are here with us, and I've got Michael Magro. I used to bowl with Michael. Yeah, I miss seeing you around, man. He said he's a big Nashville Predators fan like myself, and he said hashtag Fire Hines, hashtag Preds. Have a good one, Colin. Miss seeing you around. Miss seeing you too, brother. But but we want you to, if you're online or on our YouTube or our Facebook accounts, we would love for you to leave comments. If you have any questions, leave some questions for us, because we will definitely answer them. Today's topics, we got some pretty good topics about today, don't we?
Oh yeah, we do. Yes, we do.
So well, let's get on with it, brother. You ready?
Let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll this thing.
All right. Well, let's for one, let's talk about why you're in a different location.
I'm baking my ass off. It's I talked to my wife yesterday morning, still up there in Tennessee, and there's 32 degrees. I don't think it's hit below 90 here. It's like 89 and 90. With that Florida sun out, it feels like it's 95. You know what? I mean, living here, 50 years, pretty much all my life, I don't ever remember a mid-February where it's been this hot consistently. I mean, it's right now we have August type of temperatures. It's crazy. Yeah. It's really crazy.
Man, I wish I was down there, for sure.
Man, I wish I was up. You know, this Florida boy, 2 years or 2.5 years removed from Florida, I'm not liking this heat, dude. It's like, man. And my wife's probably watching right now up there in Tennessee. She says she's going to tune in tonight, but she's probably going to kill me. But my head buff, as you can see, I look like a peach ripe tomato. My head buff for 2 days straight, and each night I get back here after I come off the water and I say, I got to remember, one thing I got to remember when I get back is put my buff in the boat. And where do you think it's been? It was in the truck this morning again. So, but I guarantee you, as soon as I pulled off the water today, it went in the boat. So now I should be able to cover my ass up.
Yeah, we got Let's see. We've got my dad's on here,
What's up,
and
Steve?
and we got my buddy Rusty Brock, and we also got Scott Walker on here.
What's up,
Uh,
Scott?
Scott said, "What's up, fellas?" Remember, Scott's been on a couple of our podcasts before, uh, from up there in Maryland. So, but so you're down there doing a little guide. Or you done your first guide trip today, right?
Yeah, yeah. I got down here last. Well, actually, I left Wednesday. Um, I got on the water Thursday. I usually go right into to what I've been doing and how things are going. So I pre-booked. Right now, I have nine trips pre-booked. So, I headed down Wednesday, and my game plan was I got three lakes I was going to basically focus on. One Placid, one being Lake June, and then the other is Lake Estepoga. And I was going to do one each day. So I went to Placid the first day, and typically on Placid, yeah, I do a lot of Carolina rig, deep water type stuff, shell bed. Now there's some brush piles, but mainly a lot of shell bed. Most of the big bass on Placid is they're all resident offshore fish. There's so much out there, so much that keeps the bait out there that they don't really need to go inside them. And now they do go in from time to time, but pretty much they go in, they come right back out. They live offshore. So I spent about the first 4 hours on Thursday out on Placid. I don't know. I mean, I must have hit 15 different locations. And the kicker is I'm marking fish in every place I stop, and I throwing Carolina rigs, throwing drop shots, changing baits. I actually picked up some heavier spinner baits and started slow rolling 20 foot of water on shell beds, bumping it through trees, seeing if I could get a reaction because they just didn't. They weren't chewing out there,
Yeah.
just not chewing at all. So yeah, I said, this is ridiculous, man. So I pulled the boat out and I headed over for Estepoga, which that was actually the lake I was going to hit on my last day of scouting. So put the boat in, and it probably took me about 2.5 hours on Estepoga, and I finally started coming up with some kind of an idea on what's going on out there. So anyway, I pulled off of Estepoga and headed back for the house. And next day I went to June, and I spent the first half a day fishing offshore. And again, just like Placid, the offshore bite is just non-existent. And the funny thing about it is, the fish are out there. They're just such in a lethargic state that they're just not chewing at all.
Yeah.
And
Well, they're
again,
kind of.
I mean, I couldn't. It's been tough before, but typically you could always get them to eventually react to something.
Right. Well, you got to
I
think though, them fish are kind of doing like what you're doing. I mean, you're saying that it's upper 80s in the
well,
90s down there,
yeah. Well, here's the
and
thing.
they're still
Exactly.
trying to react to getting used
Exactly.
to that temperature change.
Yep. You nailed it on the head right there, Colin. This is it's a uncharacteristic heat that we're having here in February, and typically in February, even in Florida, and people don't think it gets cold in Florida. Well, it doesn't get cold compared to what you get, once you leave the state of Florida, but you still get your, 50 and degree nights most every night in Florida, whether it's hot days or not. It's going to be in the 50s at
Right.
nighttime, and that's the difference between up north and Florida weather is it'll get in the 50s at nighttime, but as soon as the sun comes up, it gets up into the high 70s, low 80s. Well, even at nighttime, it's in the high 80s right now during
Right.
the night, and that's very, very uncharacteristic of what you usually have in mid-February here,
Right.
even though it is Florida. So you got that going on, which the fish really aren't used to that. They're and from what I understand, a week and a half ago, we were having here. Well, we weren't. We were still. I was still in Tennessee, but they were having temperatures in the 40s and in the 30s. So just like that, it just went up into the 90s. It's almost
Right.
the same scenario as if you go out and buy goldfish. you don't want to take the bag the goldfish comes in and dump them directly into the tank because
Right.
you'll kill goldfish because they have to acclimate themselves to the temperature change in the water.
Right.
And even though it will kill the bass, it takes a while. They say in that lethargic state until they can adapt to the change. Right now, our the water temperature on June today was like 70. I think it said 76. Typically, this time of the year, mid February, the water temperature usually is still in the mid 60s.
Right. Now, and you said it's 76 right now?
The water temperature today on June was 76.
Man.
And like I say, typically this time of the year, mid February, it's still mid 60s. You know, it'll get up into the 68, but usually it stays right around that 65 to 68-degree mark.
Right.
And it's like it's in the high to mid 70s right now. And I
Man.
guarantee a week and a half ago when it was having those cold temperatures here, it's still having the wintertime temperatures here. I guarantee you the water temperature was in the mid 60s. So
Oh,
it probably raised much in a few days.
yeah, you probably had a little better bite. Or they probably had a little better bite in that mid 60s, though, than they do
Oh yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So,
You would, and even still, give it a couple of days. They have to eat, but
right.
give it a couple of days for them to start getting themselves more acclimated with the water temperature changes. You know, it might get a little bit better bite out there.
Right.
But going back to late June, after I seen the offshore bite really wasn't working, there's Lake June and has a set of canals that go up in it, and which typically this time of the year can be really good. The fish will actually
Yeah.
push into the canals to spawn. So I went up in the canals and I started trying to figure a little something out. I was catching a lot of numbers and wasn't catching any big fish yet. And then I finally caught my first 4 pounder up in the canals, and I'm starting to try to, use my head and say, okay, what are they doing? Where are they coming and where are they going?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of beds, a lot of fresh beds all over the place, but there's nothing on them. There's no
Yeah.
fish on the beds.
Yeah. I remember when I talked to you here, what was it? Well, we talked every day since you've been gone, but 2 days ago you were saying, like, I see these beds and they're like in less than a foot of water, and I'm not seeing nothing. But then you was throwing what was, I think you said that you was throwing like a drop shot or something like that, and you'd get it. You caught three fish within a matter of like 10 feet from each other, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started out throwing a jerkbait in there. Typically, this time of the year, you could get a jerkbait reaction bite. There's a lot of seawalls, a lot of docks, but between each dock, you got good seawall, and the water's up right now. So
Yeah.
you got probably about a foot and a half of water on the seawalls. And when they bed in these canals, they're going to bed as tight to the seawalls, and you'll actually find them bedding where they actually have their bed right in the middle with a pot, basically a dock pylon right in the middle of it. And the bed will be actually built around the pylon.
Right.
But I started seeing a lot of beds, but no fish on them. So I started changing baits a little bit, and I decided I'm going to go to a wacky rig and
Right.
slow it down, way down, lighten my presentation way up. Didn't put a weight on it, just basically a weightless
Just
wacky rig.
yeah.
And I think uh, the first 10 minutes, I caught three in a row, bam, bam, bam. So then I'm like, okay. So I just continued through the wacky rig, just trying to expand on different areas, just trying to figure out what these fish were doing, why there were so many fresh beds, but nothing was on them.
Yeah.
And as I was fishing, every time I'd come to a fresh bed and see the bed, I'd throw towards it, and when I got the bait off of the bed, probably back about 6, 7 foot on the boat side of where the bed is, I get bit.
Right. Yeah,
So
we
now
got a
I'm thinking,
couple. We got a couple questions real quick.
go ahead.
Um, my dad asked, after a day or two, will those fish that you marked offshores tend to be more active?
Say that again, Colin. I didn't hear.
After a day or two, will those fish that you marked offshores, will they tend to be more active?
That's kind of what I'm hoping. And again, that goes back into the thing with the water temperature right now. And I'm sure, because they were having but right, well, actually, right before I left to come to Florida, like days before, it was still the temperatures were still in the 50s at night. And I think a week before that they had a real cold spurt where I think I seen a couple guys posting where it was like 32 and 33 degrees.
Yeah.
So I think in a couple days, yes. The answer to that, Steve, is yes. I think they will get a little bit more active once they kind of more so acclimate themselves to the water temperature change. Yeah, I think yes, they will.
Yeah. And we got quite a few people on here. We got Earl Ross, Jamie Jones, Brandon Heimer, and Jonathan Hawkins
What's
just
up,
joined
buddy?
us. So, yeah, that's what I was thinking as we were talking before. That as that temperature, they adjust to that 70-degree temperature or mid 70s. Uh, that bite should turn on for you, I think. And
Yeah.
so, which I know that's what you love to do is that offshore Carolina
Yeah.
rig.
Typically on those two bodies of water, and that's where it is offshore bite, and unfortunately with Lake June, about 5 years ago, they put a bunch of grass carp in there, and unfortunately, it had a big side effect to the lake where basically the shoreline bite is absolutely non-existent anymore. Those grass carp, they basically cleaned out every blade of Kissimmee grass and every blade of grass around that entire shoreline. So all you got now around the shoreline is docks.
Yeah,
So, and that's kind of unfortunate of what happened to that lake as far as the lake itself. So you're pretty much, if you don't get on a dock bite around, and you have to find water deep enough that goes back to where the docks are, typically you're pretty much stuck offshore. And like I
yeah,
say, this time of the year, and that's one of the reasons I figured let me go in the canal see what's going on, because the canals can be really good this time of the year. So fish will
yeah,
pull up and bed in them canals.
yeah. Because how deep are them canals usually?
Well, the water's actually up right now in June. The canals in the middle, when the water is at normal level, is usually 6 foot. Six, sometimes I can get 6.5 foot in different areas. But right now, like under the docks and the boathouses and stuff in the canal, you're still in about 5 foot of water where the boat docks are, and on the seawalls you're still at about a foot and a half. So there's some areas on the seawalls you got almost 2 foot of water, which is good.
Yeah. Uh, um, I'm trying to type up another banner real quick. While we're doing that, kind of explain the what you're using like bait wise. Even go down to like even because I know you're going to get on that Carolina bite here while you're down there. I know that that's a given that's just going to happen. Um, so if you can do that while I type this up real quick.
All right. Well, anyway, once I got into the canals, I started going to the wacky rig. I wanted to slow things down. Wanted to really downsize, finesse it. So I picked up my Power Core custom rod, spinning rod, and I basically taught a wacky rig on weightless, no weight. I just wanted that thing as light as possible, and the bite's so light. When I did start getting bit, the bite is so light. And again, anytime you fish a wacky rig too, you have to be a line watcher. You don't want to take your eyes off that line because that line's going to tell you a lot with a wacky rig. A lot of times you don't feel the bite, and if you feel the bite, it's too late because the fish already feels you. But I'm throwing a wacky rig, and I picked up. I don't have the color on with me here, but my hot color that I'm throwing on the wacky rig, and this is a bruiser bait product. It's their diamond tail. It's called their diamond tail. Get a rigger. But anyway, the color I'm throwing is really my hot color this week or on June is their watermelon candy, and it
Yeah.
has that it has that purple, that green flake, the little black flake to it. But it's their watermelon candy. This is actually watermelon. I've caught them on the watermelon too, but that watermelon candy is a hot ticket right now. But I'm throwing it on 12-pound test fluorocarbon. Uh, it's the same line I use as a leader line on Carolina rig, but I'm throwing it very light tackle and just almost letting it set. You let it because
Yeah.
if you fish that wacky worm weightless too fast, it's going to bring it right to the top. You want it to stay down. So, and when you're working it, you don't want to work it with your handle, your reel, or your rod tip. You want to work it with your slack line. That's the biggest mistake most people make with a wacky rig, is they try to bounce it with the rod tip. Well, what you'll do when you bounce it with the rod tip is you're pulling that wacky rig straight up top because there's no weight to it.
Right.
So you let that big dip in the line, and all you do is you take your rod tip and just bounce your line. Let that loop
Yeah.
let the dip in the line just bounce, not with it, so you're not putting any pressure on that bait because the
Right.
slightest little pressure bouncing your line is going to make a reaction to that wacky rig, but it's not going
Yeah.
to pull it off the bottom up to the top.
So it's like a slack line kind of presentation, what you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, and you have to fish it slack because again, there's no weight, and these baits are a really, really light bait. And the hook
Yeah.
I'm using is just, a wacky rig hook. It's a finesse rig, so the wacky rig hook is very light as well. So there's
Yeah.
no weight to the bait at all. So you have to be very methodical when you fish this thing. You don't want to pull it with the rod tip, or you don't want to work it too fast. You have to just almost let it set there, and then every
Yeah.
once in a while you just let that dip in the line just twitch, and
Right.
it'll actually, you don't think it's actually affecting the bait, but that slack little dip in the line when you just twitch that little line, that bait's so light it's going to move the bait.
Right.
But it doesn't move it fast. It basically just, almost like a squid. It's just going to come up about a half a foot, and like that. When
Yeah.
you take that dip in the line and just twitch it, what's going to happen is it's just going to do this. And then when you let that dip get slack again, it folds and flutters down. And
Right.
then
Right.
it opens up when you twitch that dip, and then it folds back up when it goes down.
Right.
So that, it almost creates a reaction when you do that. If there is a fish watching the bait and just doesn't want to do it, it's still a lethargic bite. You might get a reaction out of that fish when you just the slightest little twitch because of the way the bait opens up and compresses as you're doing it. And that's really how a wacky worm works anyway.
Right.
Is it gets squid action.
Yeah. Now, Brandon Heimer said that he's noticed on Nickajack where they're moving up to shallow. Yeah, we noticed that here last week when we were out there.
Yeah, they're gonna
That
start
that
moving you now.
they're starting to, and Brandon, you'll see the smallmouths won't move up right now, uh, up shallow. They're actually they should be spawning what Norman here within this week. The next week should start a spawn cycle, uh, in which they'll be in about 15 to 20 feet is where they'll spawn.
Yeah.
So
See, and that's your big difference between when you get out of the state of Florida, like once you get up in Tennessee and Kentucky and every bits and parts of the southeastern United States outside the Florida state line, is typically, the fish don't start spawning. Just for example, in Tennessee, typically they'll start spawning April is when the heavy spawn is for the largemouth anyway.
yeah,
It's typically April, May. Where down here, I've seen them spawn as early as October, and I've seen them spawning as early or as late as May.
yeah,
And it's more weather related in Florida.
yeah. Well,
Climate
see,
change, climate change and barometer pressure will affect bass more in Florida than up out of the state. In Tennessee, they're more used to that little bit more dramatic climate change. Where Florida, they're not used to that, so it affects them a lot more in Florida.
yeah. And so we'll get into more of that because that was one of our topics was when they're going to be spawning. So, um, what kind of like when you're punching those reeds and stuff like that? What kind of weight and stuff are you using to punch them reeds?
Well, getting back on Estepoga now, my I guess my third day of scouting went to Estepoga. Well, actually, I spent after I came out of class, I went back. When I got a chance to spend a full day on Estepoga, it probably the first 3 hours, then I started kind of figuring things out there. Um, right now, and I'm not gonna. I still got got 8 trips on Estepoga before I head back to Tennessee. And again, tomorrow I got a trip on Estepoga, so I'm not going to kind of give up everything right now. But what you got going on right now is, again, the water temperature is extremely hot for this time of the year, and them fishes aren't used to that. And even Estepoga, I think the other day when I was out there, I didn't really pay too much attention, but I think it was like the almost the mid 70s, like 73, 74, and it's still extremely high.
Yeah.
So I started flipping bulrush and some cattails, and then I pulled up into a general area that I've done really well in the past this time of the year, and I started focusing in on a mixture of, and it's not large areas. It's basically isolated patches of a 3 different types of vegetation, and I kind of got to leave it at that. I don't want to kind of give it all up, but Florida fishermen, if I say 3 different types of vegetation, will probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But what you got going on in Florida is, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Mats. Okay? I got bulrush, cattails, lily pads, and blown in mats. Now, what a blown in mat is, if you're not from Florida and not used to mat fishing, a mat is a floating vegetation or hyacinth vegetation that is not attached to the bottom. It's basically blown in. It does have the root system coming down, but it's on the surface. So under that mat is pretty much open water other than the tentacles that hangs down off the mat. And the thing about a mat is when your water temperature is extremely cold, okay, the fish will actually get under the mats because the water temperature will actually be a little bit warmer directly underneath the mat versus other areas of the lake. So it's a little bit warmer under the mat. And mat fishing or punching is a good option when you got a cold front, when you got a barometer drop, because they'll actually pull under the mats as well.
Yeah.
But it works in reverse when the water's hot, because when the water starts warming, the mats underneath the mats will actually have a little bit cooler water, because now what you have happening is you don't have that direct sunlight that's penetrating the surface of the water. So you don't, bass hate direct sunlight. Okay, they don't like it. They and anywhere you got direct sunlight, I mean, you tell by my face I'm beat red. Anywhere you got direct sunlight beating on you, it's going to be a little bit hotter water. Well, under the mats, you don't have that direct sunlight to penetrate through, so the fish will pull up under the mats. But what they do is they pull right underneath the surface of it. Because remember, there's nothing down below. There's a root system hanging down.
Right.
But it's not attached to the bottom. It's just vegetation that's floated in, and it gets locked in to the clumps of bulrush and cattails. So it's not going to go anywhere. They kind of harness it all in there. So what the fish will do now under the mats is they don't get on the bottom. The fish actually get up right underneath the mat. So when you're punching a mat, when you drop the bait through the mat and it goes all the way down to the bottom, instead of, twitching it when it's on the bottom, what you want to do is pull that weight up till you feel it hit the bottom of that mat. Once it hits the bottom of the mat, don't pull it back all the way through. Once you feel it hit the bottom of the mat, you want to bounce it a couple times up right underneath the surface of that mat. Because remember, the fish aren't on the bottom now. Their heads is right up under the mat. That's where you're going to get the biggest temperature change from what you got outside that mat. So bounce it a couple times under the mat. Usually, if there's fish under there or there's a fish in front of it and it doesn't hit it when it goes past them, if you bring it up right up underneath the mat, and that's where you want to start kind of working it and twitching it, usually she'll react to that, and you'll be surprised. All of a sudden, you'll just have your rod just sizzling.
Oh, yeah.
But that's kind of what I got on too. I caught my first fish doing that.
Yeah.
And then my brainstorming here. And when you're fishing, and good little bit of advice for everybody. When you're fishing, you want to use your head. You want to think. You don't know how many times I've been out, had anglers out with me, and they catch a fish, and 10 minutes later I'll ask them, how were you working at bait, or what did you catch that fish in, or how fast were you reeling the bait, or and
Yeah,
I don't know, you know,
yeah, but they
how
won't know.
fish. Keep that in the back of your mind because that's going to make a big difference for you the rest of the day and trying to figure
Yeah,
that that's pattern fishing. And I've always had a big theory: one fish is luck, two fish is a pattern. If you can catch another fish fairly quick, fishing the same way, doing the same thing, you got yourself a pattern.
exactly.
Now you just hopping all around lake trying to duplicate what you just found in other areas.
Right. You need to stop giving out all these juicy tips right here. They,
Okay.
you, you,
I tell you,
you,
anybody watching this right now, I don't want to go in. I got a guide trip tomorrow. If I go into my area and see about 20 boats in there, I'll know there's people listening to me.
yeah, they're listening. But, and
Wait,
also,
I'm down here for 2.5 weeks. Wait till I leave.
right, right. But the thing about like what you were saying is they do that also up underneath matted grass. So up in our area, you do the exact same thing in the matted grass too.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
just like up in Tennessee, you got matted. You'll get matted hydrilla. Milfoil's big, in certain areas up there too. But now you don't get so much matted high. Now you used to. Estepoga used to have a lot of hydrilla in it. And I mean, the fish was unbelievable back then when it had the abundance of hydrilla. And that's a sore subject for another day.
yeah,
But Okeechobee is the same way. You get that hydrilla max. If you could get on a line of hydrilla, and again, hydrilla is very similar to like a hyacinth mat. Only difference is hydrilla is attached to the bottom, but you still when you see it matted up on the surface. That's why when you pull a strand of hydrilla out of the water, if you pull that strand straight up, it'll probably be 6 foot above the water and it's still attached
right,
to the bottom. That's where you get your mat. When the high, just because it hits the surface doesn't mean the hydrilla stops growing. And
yep,
as it grows, it's just going to float on the surface and create that mat. But when it mats up on the top. But it's almost like a motel underneath for them, because it's still a lot of openings underneath there where they kind of maneuver back and forth through the hydrilla. It's by no way like the mat on the top below it. Then fish
right,
love it because it blocks that direct sunlight in summertime. It's a little bit cooler in the wintertime because the water warms faster in the wintertime, so they'll pull under it. But yeah, and it's all open under there. So when you do punch a bait through it, it's not like it's the way it is on the surface. It's not like that underneath.
right. Well, let's speaking of Florida fishing, let's talk a little bit because I don't want to get have you give all your tips and stuff like that away. And if you want any more of his tips, uh, contact Norman and book a guide trip, and he'll tell you
There you
everything
go.
that you need.
There
Um,
you
but let's talk about the weekend that Florida had this weekend. Let's talk about Okeechobee with the Bassmasters Elite. And so,
Yeah, there's some hammering time going on down there.
yeah, I mean, after day one, who would have thought that after day one that the winning bag would have been over 86 pounds?
Man, yeah,
So,
they were stacking and packing.
oh man, they were stacking them up, and so, which our good buddy Matt Robinson, he didn't fare too well. He would have done better. Uh,
He had a
he
pretty rough.
almost made the day three cut, almost, but
You know
that
what?
first
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
you're good. But that first day, only having like 7 8 pounds that first
Yeah.
day, that put a big hole that he had to dig out of.
See, and
So
that's one thing with Matt too, and most all them guys fishing at that level. In a lot of ways, that's what separates. There's a lot of great anglers, and there's a lot of great talent out there that can fish at that level, that has the skill set to fish at that level. But one thing that separates a lot of them guys from a lot of other guys is up here.
Yeah.
You know, just for example, Matt had he had a day that most anglers would want to forget. Okay, I think he weighed in. He was in what 80 something place
Yeah.
out of 94
The
boats after
104
day.
boats.
104 boats. He was in. He was almost dead last. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. And he knew going in to the second day he was going to have over 20 pounds to even have a chance to make the day three cut. There's
Yeah.
no other way to say it. And that's what separates at that level from a lot of other guys is it's all up in the head. You know, it doesn't let the pressure get to you. Just goes out and
No.
fishes. And he ended up, what did he come out with? 21 pounds, and he
Uh,
missed
I think
just
he.
top 50.
I think he ended up the day two. He had 26 pounds, something like that. I mean, he had a decent sack,
Yeah.
but also with that 26 pounds. No, I take it back. You were right. 21 pounds
Yeah, 21
because
pounds, and he had
yeah,
7 change
yeah.
total for 2 days.
But he also had two of them that were 2 pounds, and so
Yeah, so that's
all
gonna get
if
rid
he
of
would
the
have
2
just
pounders.
if he would have just had one of them Okeechobee tanks down there, he would have. I mean, he would have been fishing for day three. But
Exactly. And that's just what goes to tell you, you know, fishing, and a lot of people tell us too, they just don't understand it. But fishing is, and I don't even think it's 50-50. Fishing is 80-30,
yeah,
80% mental. Um, if you go out with the positive mindset that you're going to catch them no matter what, typically you're going to do it.
yeah.
And you won't always do it, but you have to have that positive mindset, and that's them guys. Nothing gets to them, you know. And to come back, great comeback, Matt. We're proud of you, brother.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're gonna be seeing Matt here in a few weeks and hanging with our boy. But yeah, just a
Well,
great man.
well, we got Michael, Scott, Goodrich, Matt. Michael Lindell is on, and he says, "What's up, big dogs?"
What's
So,
up?
what's up, Michael? So, and then we got yeah, that we we like seeing Michael Lindell get on here because Norman gets on a rant about the big nasty.
The
So
original Big Nasty,
that's
Michael.
it. So
Bottom line.
heck yeah. So but I actually thought like going out or coming out of day two, going to day three. I thought that the old G man was going to pull it through. That he could have got that first win. That I thought he was going to be able to pull it out. So
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the five. Unfortunately, I like to follow it a little bit, and with me down here, just basically working down here right now, spending 9, some cases 9.5 hours. I just didn't get a chance to follow it as much as I would have liked. But yeah, I did see
yeah,
where Gerald he ended up in like what 14th or 15th.
no, he came in 11th.
Oh, so he
He
just missed the top 10
he
cut then.
he missed the top 10 less than a pound.
Wow.
So he missed it,
And
and
no
then a
he's
guy
gonna.
from our neck of the woods, which he lived in our neck of the woods, and now he's back in Alabama. Kyle Welcher, uh, he had a heck of a tournament too, but he came in 13th, and I think he missed it by a pound and a half, 2 pounds, making the final day the top 10. So,
Yeah.
which I mean, Kyle he's been tearing. Well, last year, he kind of had a down year, but that's kind of overseen when he goes into the classic and tied with weights,
Yeah.
for number one in the classic going into the last day. And he lost the classic, I think was 2 ounces that he lost the classic. And so, but
One of the classics in history.
yeah, and I'm telling you by far to me, that was one of the best classics in a long time. Um, because it was so neck to neck that I mean it could have went either way on that classic.
Yeah, but I'll tell
So
you what, man. I was so happy to see Christy pull it off, though. I mean,
yeah.
I love Kyle, but Kyle's still young. He has a long future ahead of him. But Christy's been through a lot of heartache in the classic here over
Well,
the
that's what I was
past.
about to say. Could you
And
imagine if
that's like his reason for coming back to Bass is
right?
because he wanted that classic win, and I mean, I think it was two times he was the final two
Yeah,
standing,
that
and
was the
just
third time that he was number one, and that's the first
yeah,
time he ever won it. And so,
yeah,
but he had that. What was it? I couldn't. The classic that he was in, the last time that he did not win it, that he was in number one. That was a hard. I mean, everybody
I
hurt
mean
for him. Bro. That one
he
was
went
like,
out with a good lead too. He went out
yeah,
with like a 5 point lead that day.
yeah,
And that
that was
was hard.
yeah. So, Michael Lindell said post spawn bite coming, and Lake Garcia is on fire. Chatterbait and Bruiser Big Stick waited. So maybe
Man,
maybe
that
we can.
that's I was gonna say that's another we need to try to when we come back in July. We need to try. Maybe that's the lake we need to try to hit. Maybe we might hit Mike Lindell up to hop on the boat with us.
That's what I was about to say. Maybe
I've
I
never
mean
been on
because
that lake.
this is two podcasts that he's come on and started talking about smashing some fish,
And
and I haven't seen no invites yet for us to come and hit.
Mike's invited me a lot before, and I need to get down there and visit
Yeah.
with Michael. Well, one thing I do want to say though is I want to throw some lines at some of those pacos that Mike has in his back in his bruiser bait big nasty testing lake behind his house.
Them things are massive.
Oh man,
So,
I like it.
uh,
Some of those boils down there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to have one pulling on my line.
well, let's switch from the Bassmasters Elite to MLF. What about Chris Lane? You know, pulling that off the last minute, the last cast, last minute, pulled off the win. So,
And I tell you what, his in the Red Crest last year, not to change the subject, but his brother basically, not really the same, but he almost done kind of the same thing. Pulled it off with the last 5 minutes to go in the Red Crest to win that as well.
yeah,
So both Lane brothers pulling out, a tournament just with what minutes to go.
yeah. That I mean, it was awesome. So, um, let's talk about. You kind of talked about when you're talking about your fishing down in Florida, what the bass are doing down there. But let's talk about what bass are doing up here in Tennessee. Um, what it here in Tennessee, people that live here in Tennessee knows, and people like one day we can have a day that's in the 70s. Next day it could be in the 40s, right, Norman? And
Yep.
so, what them bass are doing, and what you want to look for when you're trying to find some big fish or big bass, them bass are going to be moving up. You need to be looking into like the secondary points up onto some flats. Uh, and so, because what they're going to do on them warm days, when it gets warm enough, like you got a hoodie on. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. But when you got a hoodie on and it's like almost too hot to have the hoodie on, well, them bass and that midday heat is going to pull up onto them flats. And so they're not looking right now. They're not looking for places to spawn. They're all they're doing is just kind of just roaming, but they'll pull up onto them flats and just destroy some bait fish. And then like the next day it could be in the 40s. And so what they're going to do, they're going to still be around that flat, but they're going to back off into where it's into deeper water. So and what I like to throw and what Norman and I have been throwing when we've gotten out uh, has been some lipless crankbaits. Right now, we're also throwing some deep crankbaits for especially when it's a colder day and they've backed off. Will stay off of them flats and we make the as long as cast as you can make. And what you'll do is you real fast pause, real fast pause, and just keep on doing that. And you're going to get a reaction bite. It's not like when they're pulled off like that. They're not really wanting to eat. They're not looking to eat. So when you real fast and it stops and pauses, what that's going to do is it's going to cause a reaction bite. Uh, and that is when you're going to be catching some big tanks because you're going to be coming right into uh, their wheelhouse with it.
Yeah.
So
And instead of what I like to do too is once that crankbait gets down and starts bumping the bottom, take and rip it. You know,
yeah,
because the fish are still in. You still need to create the reaction bite out of them. You know, to get them to react to that bait. So sometimes when you just steady crank the crankbait and it's bouncing on the bottom, it's not really going to do it for them. But if you take and once you feel it hitting the bottom, just kind of rip it up. That crankbait's going to dart off the bottom, and then it's just going to stop, and
yeah,
it's going to levitate there for a couple of minutes.
yeah,
Typically, when you do that a couple times, rip it and let it levitate. As soon as you rip that bait, them fish are going to hit it when it's levitating. When you go
right,
to cranking again, they're going to be on there. So I
exactly,
like to give it a little bit more of an erratic action once it hits the bottom by ripping the rod tip. And a lot of people just you see them just steady cranking. Try to rip it once it gets down to the bottom. Rip it and
yeah,
let it get that darting action back up. And then fish that won't hit it otherwise will hit it. Will
right,
react to it. That.
exactly. And then I like throwing a little jerk bait. I like throwing that Mega Bass 110, and and it depends on like color for me on that depends on really what the water looks like. If I got like a stained water, I'm going for a brighter color, the chartreuses, the reds, and stuff like that. Um, and if it's a clear water, I'm going to throw more of a natural shad looking color.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I like throwing these next two baits. I like throwing a lot when the bass have pushed up onto those flats, the shallow flats. Um, and I use pretty much like the same presentation to them, and which is a blade bait and a underspin. Um, One thing that I like to do with the underspin is I put on like a 2.8 Kitech or like a 3.0 Kitech, and I'll let it sink all the way down to the bottom. And all I'm doing is just slow reeling it right now. Uh, I do not want that bait to leave the bottom because I want it to be dragging the bottom. Uh, and people might say, well, that blade is useless then, but really it's not because if you're throwing that up over onto like some shell beds and you're dragging it, that blade is just going to tick 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 tick, and so that's going to draw the bass in. And so what they're going to be doing, they're going to be looking down at that bass, and so all you got to when they do that, then they're just as you keep on, and it just keeps on ticking. They're just gonna come up, wham, and just nail that sucker.
Yeah.
So,
And Bruiser Bait has an underspin out. I'm just talking about it on a spur here, and I can't. The name of it actually slipped my mind. And if Mike's still watching, maybe you can
yeah,
comment the name of it. But Bruiser Bait has an underspin, which I like the underspin Bruiser Bait has for one simple reason
yeah,
that the weight on it's tungsten. And
yeah.
I've never seen many underspins. Most of them's going to have
No, it's
the
all that
lead.
lead. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Underspins that made out of tungsten material.
yeah. We got
And
Mike Wendell and Byron Childers is in the chats just chatting amongst each other. So they're giving each other a hard time. So, um, but yeah, we got Aaron Vincent and Mike Formont on here. Mike Formont used to be one of the supervisors that I had at Coca Cola. So I've known him for quite a long time. So, um, and with how it's the temperature and all that starting to go, I really like this time of the year because it's opening up to where you can use a lot more different baits. Uh, the power fishing people that love to power fish, they're starting to itch right now because that power fishing is starting to get ready. And I mean, you can start cranking some stuff and be able to rip some lips right now. So, uh, let's talk, Norman, about when will fish start to spawn? You kind of hit on it earlier, and Mike Lindell had said something about which he's in southern Florida, right?
Yeah, Mike's down. Mike's another hour, or another actually 2.5 hours south of us.
Right.
Mike's down more towards Pembroke Pines area, which is close to Miami area. Everybody knows where Miami is, down by there.
Yeah. Mike Lindell actually says when you come down to South Florida, time to put the underspin down and pick up the 16-inch worm.
There
So
you go.
I believe it. When we came down last year for ICAST, we had that big nasty on, and we got onto some. So, but I'm really looking forward to going to the Everglades, though. So,
Yeah.
but
And we're gonna
so
have to we're gonna have to do that Lake Garcia thing too. When we
yeah,
come down to that, would be another, instead of eliminating one of the lakes up here, maybe do the Lake Garcia and see if we can't get. We'll go out filming because we're gonna be filming every lake we go to when we go down in July. But see if we can't get Mike to hop on the boat with us and shoot a video with him, maybe on Garcia, being that he knows it so well. I've never been on Lake Garcia, but
yeah.
I've heard a lot about it.
Well, that will definitely be a pleasure to have him out on the boat. So, uh, but back to he said they're spawning down there or down here, and he said anytime. So we'll definitely be contacting you, Michael, about when we come down
We'll
for
have to
ICAST.
get in July and
Yeah,
visit with you a little bit down there.
heck yeah. But the spawn down in Florida, like you've heard Mike Lindell and Norman Lee already talking, it is already hammering down right now. But uh, up here in Tennessee, we're still, I'd say, a month and a half at least until we start seeing it. We need, people say the magic number for water temperature is 60 degrees, but I've seen them start spawning about 58 degrees up to where they did not start spawning until the water temp was 62. So, I mean, I guess they're just saying the middle number of it, but we're not
On
quite right
average.
there yet.
Right now here in Florida, really the magic number here for the prime spawn is usually like 68 to 69 degrees. But the problem I think we're having now, and again, I've seen all them fresh beds in the canals on June, and fish are getting ready to pull on them probably, from kind of what I read into it out there in the canals. But I think the problem the fish are going to have this year is getting back to how hot it is now. The water temperature right now in the canals in like June 76 degrees, and I can't ever remember Florida seeing 76-degree water temperature in mid-February.
Yeah.
So I think what's going on now is a lot of these fish have not spawned yet here in Florida.
Right.
On Lake June, Lake Placid, even like at Estapoga, they haven't spawned yet. But now the water temperature is all the way up in 76 degrees now, and I don't think it's going to get back down to the 60s. So now the fish are having to, the fish that are going to spawn anyway, but it's kind of that's another thing I think was really screwing up what's going on now and kind of affecting things a little bit is they're just not used to it to this
Yeah.
hot weather so quick. So
Right. So Mike Lindell said he's got to go eat, and he said take care,
okay,
guys, and he said Garcia is a fun place. So we'll
all
definitely
right,
have to make that, Norman, on
yeah.
our trip. So, uh, but other than that, how many more trips you got? Guide trips you got coming down there or down there?
Right now, today was my first. I have 8 pre-booked. Today was the first, so I got 7 more in 2.5 weeks. I still
Nice.
do have a couple open dates left, so if anybody's interested, holler at me. But yeah, I got 7 more trips booked so far. And
Good
tomorrow I'll
deal.
be on Esteban.
Yeah, I like Estepoga, but I I've never been down there right now. But when we go down there in July, there's no better place, in my opinion, is Placid or June. So, but other than that, uh, what so you said you're going to Escapoga tomorrow,
Yep.
and then you got a couple more dates coming up that
Yeah.
are available. So we want to make sure that if you're down in Lake Placid area or Central Florida area, holler at Norman, and he's going to put you on some big old fish. So
Yep. I'm
no
completely
pressure,
booked.
no
Yeah.
pressure.
You're right. I'm completely booked up this week. I do have actually Wednesday open, but I already got. I'm heading down to Bruiser Bait Facilities Wednesday to visit a little bit with the boys at Bruiser. So I'll be down there Wednesday. But I have I don't have my calendar in front of me, but 2 or 3 dates available the following week. So
Yeah. Now we got another question. Um, it says, "How does the temperature affect the topwater bite?"
um, typically you get on an early topwater bite. Uh, you still need a little bit of breeze blowing. You still need a little bit of water movement. But earlier in the morning, once the sun comes up above the trees and you get that bluebird sky is pretty much usually unless unless you're down in the Everglades and you throw it all day long. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically morning and evening, and it's in general that's about pretty much everywhere, unless you get overcast conditions where you can throw it all day long and get the fish to come up and feed all day. But typically, once the sun starts coming up, put it down and slow things down a little bit. And if you're on a flipping lake, start flipping, or slow down and just start picking stuff apart.
Yeah. That is good. Well, Norman, we are pushing the 1 hour mark, brother. So I've
Running on
got,
fumes. Now, as everybody can tell, I'm kicked back, and um, I just coming off what 3 days of scouting and my first trip today. So I'm pretty much coming off of 4 10-hour days on the water, and actually today was 8 hours. But when we finish this thing up, I still have to do a complete boat overload.
yeah,
Tomorrow it's Estepoga. Today was June, so I got to basically pull every box out of my boat, put it in the truck, and put fresh boxes in that I'm going to be fishing out in Estepoga, and I still have to change up some reels and tie up some rods. So it's going to be 2 hours a week before I can even see
well,
the bed.
well, you say that. I don't feel bad for you, Norman, because I've got to get something to
Oh,
eat,
I
and
tell you,
I've got to go to sleep, and I got
I'm
to get
fishing.
up at 3 o'clock to be able to go to work. And so I don't feel bad for you, Norman. And so,
Real quick, give a shout out to we got our all new
yeah,
tumblers, and they're sharp looking. We got 2 different versions. Colin showing that we got the logo on both sides, and then we got this one out here that has the Deck Talk in big letters, and then the logo, of course, on the other side. So
Yeah.
they're available.
Yep. So if you are wanting some of the well, I can't say merch. We just got the cups right now. So if you're wanting
Yeah,
some of the
we don't,
cups,
we don't, yeah, we just got the tumblers done so far, and
just
we're just
holler
gonna
at
do.
Norman and I. We can take care of you on that. And so then we got to call our guy that makes it, which is Bruce Anderson with
Yeah.
Deep
Shout
South
out to
Line.
Bruce. He does some great work. But
Yeah,
I will tell you, I was out in 90-degree weather fishing all day, and I poured a mount. Of course, I didn't drink a lot. I once I got out there, I started drinking some Gatorade just so I wouldn't dehydrate myself. But poured a Mountain Dew out of the refrigerator in this thing in the morning. I came off the water, so had half a tumbler of Mountain Dew, and it was still cold.
that's what I'm
So
talking about.
testament to what we got going on here. It keeps it cold, keeps it hot, depending on what you're drinking all day long.
Yeah. So, well, bro, let's wrap this thing up because I gotta get something to eat and I gotta get some sleep to where I can go sling some little Debbie cakes early in the morning. So,
Yeah, Colin still has a real job. I get to go out and play all day,
yeah.
and wet some lines tomorrow.
Well, hopefully one of these days I'll be joining right there with you. So, but yeah, brother, let's wrap this thing up so we can get on to where you can get your stuff done and I can get something to eat and go to sleep. So before we wrap this up though, let's we got everything going on and we do have some news that I want to say real quick. First off is our YouTube, the Deck Talk Podcast YouTube has every episode so far on it. So make sure you go there, like and subscribe to the channel. And the second, go ahead, Norman.
No, I was just gonna say it's called the Deck Talk Podcast. Make sure you type podcast in at the end of it.
Yeah, it has. It's Deck Talk Podcast. Another thing is, as of probably tomorrow morning, we're actually Norman. It's going to be we're going to be legit podcast because we're going to have right now. I've got 2 episodes loaded up, and so go check us out. We're going to be on any kind of podcast platform that you can get. So tomorrow morning, go look at our go look for Deck Talk Podcast. The first episode and the second episode is up right now. With first episode's got Josh Antwine on it. Very great. It is a killer episode. So, but other than that, that's our big news for the week. So we are official, Norman.
Yep, guys,
So,
and again, appreciate everybody's support too. You know, we're gonna make this thing go, and we're having fun, man. Having fun doing it, having fun chatting with everybody too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we love that it's interactive, where we could actually, with our viewers, we could actually talk to all of you out there while you're watching us as well.
that's it.
And,
So,
next week's podcast, we have a killer guest too, and I think it's going to be fun listening to some of the questions we're going to have from some of our viewers next
yeah,
on a real podcast.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Second.
this is the podcast that we actually have a special guest. The special guest is going to be killer. So, and right now we're working on a giveaway for that podcast. So that should be it's going to be cool. So, and we'll give more details on how the giveaway.
Yeah, go ahead and we'll go ahead and mention what the giveaway is going to be about, and what we're going to do for the giveaway as far as how it's going to how it's going to go down.
All right. So, like when we have a special guest on, we are we're going to have it to where y'all can interact with us like y'all are doing now, but you're also going to be able to interact with the special guest. So we're going to have our special guest say we're going to ask him what was his favorite question that was asked during the podcast, and he's going to pick the question, and so then that's going to be the winner of our giveaway. So right now we're still trying to tie up the loose ends of what company, and it's a big name company, the ones that we are working with right now. Which I'll kind of say right now is in the works with is Spear Point Hook for our performance hooks and Lunker Hunt. We've been in contact with them today also about it. So other than that, that's what it is. So we're going to that's what it is, Norman.
Yeah. So that's a good stuff coming, guys. I'm running on fumes, and I got about 2 hours of work here.
Yeah.
And
So
I got to
let's get
organizing some stuff anymore.
Yeah, let's get off here, brother. And it was great talking to you. And we'll probably be doing this exact same thing next Monday too.
Yeah, next Monday I'll still be here, so we'll be doing the same thing. And I think the
Yeah.
following Monday, I don't know. I think the following Monday we might be back in the podcast studio.
Yeah.
All these dates run together anymore. Unless I look at the calendar, I'm not sure what it is. I didn't know what day it is unless I look at the calendar.
Right. So, well, we're going to get off here, guys. We really appreciate y'all coming on and chit-chatting with us. And so, again, remember to go to the YouTube channel, Deck Talk Podcast, and like and subscribe. That channel has grown since last week. And so we just need to keep on growing it. And so other than that, hope to see y'all out on the water, and God bless.
And real quick too, before we close this thing out, my wife's watching as well. I wanted to just give a shout out to my wife. When I think about her, and a lot of people don't know my wife goes through a lot. We're actually a caregiver for my mom, so she puts up with a lot that she didn't sign up for. So I love her to death, and thanks for letting me go and live out my dream like she does. And she's
Yeah, she's pretty cool. So. But
all right.
Sounds good. See y'all later. Top lines.